Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. Larry Clisby joins us, Brian Newbert and Alan Karpik here. And Larry, it's amazing that we've already, this is the earliest start in the history of Purdue basketball, November 9th.
You're kidding.
I believe so, unless I didn't look the calendar right, but it seems early. But you've been watching this basketball team for a long time, all the way back to, for this season, all the way back to Italy. But tell us where you think the Boilermakers are in terms of being ready, and we've seen them obviously in 2 exhibition games as well.
Well, the sampling is way too small to make any definitive statements. I think the guard situation, point guard, 2 guard is set with the 3 Johnsons. I think that's fine. I think the wing set with Raphael and DJ, and then you're going to have to figure out what to do with the 6 bigs. And Anthrop's in the mix somewhere, but I don't think he'll play an awful lot just in matchups. I've been reading a lot of Brian stuff, and I think it's true. Matt's such a matchup guy that I think what he'll enjoy is that he has a lot of opportunities to go to the bench and see what he can do, and we'll see how it all materializes. But I really like the young talent, and we have enough guys back in Tyrone and Sandy and Anthony and DJ that we have enough experience there, so that doesn't concern me. I'm just concerned about chemistry problems, because in those 6 games that I've seen, I mean, he's put so many different combinations out there that no one has a clue. I kind of like it. I like it anytime, though, that Ronnie's out there.
Yeah, no question.
Do you think this is going to be, he's looking for 5 starters to stick with, or you think this is going to be like last year when he used, I think, 10 different starting lineups?
Don't know. I mean, we'll just see how it plays out. I do know this, that the schedule's difficult, so he's going to want to win games early, and it's going to be difficult. So, as I talked to him today, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time to mess around here trying to figure out who we're going to play. So, but I think, he'll just wait and see who surfaces at the top. And as you know, Brian, certainly in the last 5 years, we never know who's going to be there on the floor because of injuries and things like that. So I like the idea we have a lot of depth, though.
Yeah, a lot of questions are already rolling in. Larry, you're obviously around the team a lot. What do you think of the identity or personality of this team so far? Are they serious, practical jokers, tight-knit?
What impressed me the most in Italy was that they're mature. The 5 new guys, and actually you have a 6th one with Stephen Toira, but he didn't go to Italy. What I liked about the team in Italy was, and we didn't practice over there. We just played the 4 games, so we toured a lot, and it was a good bonding moment for that team. And what I liked was, there wasn't, they just seemed like grown-up men, and I like that. I like the idea that they were focused and have a pretty good idea where they want to go. Now, we've heard a lot about the motor issues with Simpson and Hammonds, and we've heard that over the past with other players. So I don't know where we are there, but I like the maturity level of the team.
Brian, what's your sense, in terms of what guys that you talk to and where this basketball team is? Obviously, the identity is so entrenched with the Kramers and the Moores and the Johnsons and Rob Hummel. Very different situation now.
Yeah. I think this team's going to have to play entirely different than the past couple of teams we've gotten used to. I think it's going to have to go back to some core philosophies, principles, whatever, that might have slipped a little bit last year in terms of defense. But this is going to have to be a team that's really going to have to rebound well. Obviously, with so many freshmen on the floor, you're going to turn the ball over more. When I say you turn the ball over more, I mean you're going to turn the ball over at all, because last year they didn't, hardly all season. But what's kind of, I guess, impressed me so far, but I still think the jury's out a little bit, is how prepared those freshmen are for college basketball. Because when you go back to 2007, our one reference point here on this season, because it's the last time Purdue had this much inexperience, those freshmen were so mature and they were so focused. I don't know if it was really that way all the time, but it looked like it on game day. From what I've seen from these freshmen so far, it looks like they're probably cut from the same cloth. We talked about Simpson and Hammonds for a second. I've been watching those guys play for 4 years now, and something's changed in them. You can tell they're a lot more focused. They're playing hard. Now, granted, I've only watched them play AAU basketball, which is, glorified noon ball. But obviously, once you get to a college program, more is going to be asked of you than the environments I've seen them play in. But so far, so good on those guys.
We had a question about it, and I know there's been a little bit of issue with Tyrone Johnson's ankle, but your impression is that he will try to give it a go tonight.
Yeah, he'll try. I mean, he was at shoot around today, so although I wasn't able to stay there for the whole shoot around, so I didn't get a chance to see it. But he's a tough kid, and he'll try to go, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
We don't need that. You know, you hate to have an ankle with anybody because
Yeah.
they're so lingering. It seems like, but again, he's a tough kid.
And he has been very impressive, at least at the times that I've
Really?
seen him play. He has just seems to have taken his game to another level. He's the player that Brian Newbert said he was going to be a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, in my impression is he started to show that really in the second half of last year.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is not a new phenomenon. for him.
Except he's improved his shooting dramatically. Dramatically.
Yeah, starting to get his hand under the ball a little bit, and it's starting to look like it's going in when it's going up. All right, now, Larry, I heard you talking offline about not being worried. We're not going to worry about this basketball team, but we have a worrier on the call here. He says, "I'm worried about the early tough schedule. It can be good in some ways, but also can be bad for our confidence." Meaning Purdue's, Bucknell, Villanova, Alabama, Clemson, Xavier, Notre Dame, all look like losses in the non-conference.
Well,
Talk me off the ledge, Larry.
Well, that's pretty definitive to say that.
I don't think they're
I
all
would.
good.
I would suggest that we watch them play game by game. I mean, I think the coolest thing about this team will be to watch them game by game. I mean, see how they progress. And I don't think that they're going to get beaten into a drum where they can't recover. I'm not. You know, we spend so much time worrying about the non-conference part of our schedule. So many people do because they say, well, you know, your RPI and things like this. I think Butler was able to negotiate it pretty well, and I think they're always a classic example for me. Don't worry about it. Just play hard, go out, play every game, see what the results are, and then go from there, because the beauty of college basketball, unlike football, is that it doesn't matter what your record is in March going into that Big Ten tourney. You always have a play card there. But I think this will be I think this team has a chance to be a very good team by the time we get to March. NCAA Final Four team, no. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying that this will be a good basketball team in March. And don't worry about that early schedule. I think we should be impressed with playing somebody good, huh?
Yeah.
We got some good games to watch. A
Yeah,
lot of times in these preseasons, you know, you're playing 6-7 games that don't prove anything to you. They don't help your confidence beating a guy by 40 points.
Right.
Getting your confidence is playing a team like Clemson, like we did in 2007, where you played a one bucket and you're playing in the final 30 seconds. Lose or win, you know, hey, we played them. We had a chance to
Or
win.
Missouri that year, too.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, you look at that, and of course we didn't mention West Virginia, but this is a challenging schedule.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back what we were just kind of talking about, with a team like this, in the grand scheme of things, is a loss really that bad a thing? Because what's worse than a lack of confidence? Probably false confidence. You know, the pride comes before the fall, that kind of thing. You know, we come from a culture now where these kids, when they're recruited, are told how great they are. All these guys won in high school. All they did was win. You know, it might not be such a bad thing for these guys to lose every now and then early in the season, because as Matt Painter always talks about, when you lose, you get focused. When you win, sometimes your focus starts to dull a little bit. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it might not be such a bad thing for these guys to lose. If the 2007 team doesn't lose that game to Wofford, who knows how that season turns out? We just don't know. I mean, that was kind of always looked back upon as kind of a watershed moment in that season.
I still remember dealing with the knuckleheads after that when they
Oh,
were
yeah.
trying to run Matt Painter out of town after that one. So
The torches were lit
Well,
pretty quick.
and that doesn't change.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go on a 3-game losing streak, they'll be doing the same thing. I mean, that's the nature of sports. So.
And this could be a very good basketball team by the end of the year, but when you're playing Michigan State, Michigan,
Yeah,
Ohio
the league is
State
good.
every single day, it might not show all that much.
yeah,
That doesn't do anything for anybody, but I'm just saying.
yeah, and
But that's 5 months away or 4 months away. I'm not
yeah,
worried.
and you do have time to get better. This is obviously we were talking about the league this year and had a couple questions about who is coming back. It's probably as strong a league as there is in the country, and it's been well documented. But are these teams at the top? Is the Big Ten worthy, in your opinion, of having 3 teams in the top 5?
No, I don't think so. But that's me.
And what makes you say that?
Well, I feel Indiana was 27-9 last year, but we're 11-7 in our league. Now they got everybody back, and they got a great All-American center, and they added Yogi Ferrell, which is so. Do I think they have a chance to be number 1? Yes, but Ohio State, they have Aaron Kraft back, who's as good a point guard there is in the country. But I don't think Deshaun Thomas is the first-team All-American.
Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't seen anything in 2 years that tells me he is. Excellent ball player, excellent offensive player, but third in the country, I'm not buying it. Michigan, Mitchell McGary and Glenn Robinson third. Yes, improves them with Trey Burke back and obviously Hardaway. I think Michigan's got a chance to be really good. Top 5, top 10, yes. So I'd say all 3 teams are top 10. I'll hedge on Indiana and say, yeah, they could be preseason number 1. So any IU fans out there saying I'm trying to be biased, I can throw that away. But I don't think we have 3 in the top 5. And for those people who think this is the strongest conference we've ever had, I would dispute that too.
There were some good ones in the 70s.
Oh, there's some great ones in the 80s.
First off, I don't think IU fans are watching this show.
Oh,
But at the
very
same
true,
time,
very
Safe
true.
on that.
Yeah, they might have. They might have one.
They're
more.
lonesome.
Yeah.
I would concur completely with what Larry just said. I think we're getting a little carried away here. I think the Big Ten's really good. I think 3 teams in the top 5 is a little bit excessive.
Okay. And I,
Yeah, they're not including Michigan State here now.
Yeah.
And I'm not all too sure Michigan State isn't
maybe
as good
the
as
best,
the
maybe,
other.
Maybe the
And
best one of the bunch.
I'm not entirely convinced one of those 3 top 5 teams will end up winning the league at the end of the day. I mean,
Exactly.
You got 3 top 5 teams, and one of them's not coached by Tom Izzo or Bo Ryan. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, if we're just going to sit and agree all the time, we'll just go home. It's crazy. No, I think you guys are right as well. It's absolutely true. Who will be our being Purdue's most dogged defender? Do any of the freshmen have any Kramer Cardinal-like qualities from an attitude standpoint? I'll let you guys both answer.
Well, Raphael Davis has the attitude. He doesn't have the talent yet to play defense like that. Kramer was, a whole different story when he was a freshman. Cardinal was okay as a freshman. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to suggest that Brian Cardinal was a great defender his redshirt freshman year. But I think Raphael has a chance to be a really good player, all-around player, mainly because of his attitude. He wants to be good, and I see, he practices his shooting. He practices free throw shooting, and he listens, and he goes to class, and he does all the things you love in a kid, and he loves being here. So I think he has a chance, but I'm not saying anybody can be. I'm not saying anybody can be Chris Kramer.
Yeah, maybe not.
And by the way, what was he, 400th in the country or something?
Probably,
So
that was my answer. I was going to say Raphael Davis also. He's very, very motivated, very physically strong.
Yes.
So he's going to.
Yeah.
That's going to help him as a defender. He's got long arms, but more than anything, he's really motivated.
Yeah.
And if you think he's motivated, wait till Bryson Scott gets here. Something about those Fort Wayne kids, makes them little dogs.
He's going to be a good player just because he wants to be. Yeah. If everybody had his attitude, I wouldn't have any trouble with this team for a long, long time.
Yeah. Ronnie Johnson obviously is very impressive just in his court sense and in all the things he does at a very young age. What will be the big challenges you think for him this year? Is it going to be just being able to do it night in, night out, playing the minutes as we expect that he'll play? But how do you view that?
Well, I think his biggest issue will be his how he's able to take criticism, because the coaches are going to be on him. Matt will be on him a lot because that's a very focal part of our offense, and he's going to be a big part of that. And not to become lazy out there. I mean, he gets casual at times, and you're not going to be able to use skip passes, those lollipops he throws across the zone, or
Exactly.
That type of thing just won't happen because against quality people that we play, there'll be layups the other way. So his biggest challenge will be defensively. And but from every other standpoint, I love the kid. I think he's, Brian's been talking about him for several years. I know Rob Blackman on our crew has seen him a lot at the high school level and has raved about him. And from what I've seen, I mean, he's clearly there to be a really great player. Now, a lot of our friends out there on the Knucklehead board will say to you, well, he's a freshman and he doesn't have experience and all that. And as I said in the blog 2 weeks ago, is how'd Trey Burke work out?
Yeah.
How'd Aaron Kraft worked out? Aaron Kraft wasn't a top 100 player, and yet, he was an all everything in the Big Ten his first year. So I think Ronnie can handle that. We have good point guards in this league. He'll learn from them, and I think he has a great demeanor.
Yeah, Your opinion,
I think,
Brian, about Ronnie?
I think the big telltale for him is going to be how quickly he learns the difference between a high school play and a college play. Because as Larry just mentioned, you can't throw these things over your head across the zone anymore like he could, at North Central when he was playing against Westfield. He can't do that against Michigan State because it's going to be a layup the other way. I think he'll learn that lesson pretty quickly. I'm sure. He has a college staff full of guys who played point guard in college. They understand the position. I think they'll get that message across to him pretty quickly. And I think he's going to turn the ball over. There's just no way around it. He's a freshman. He's going to have the ball in his hands a huge percentage of the time. There's going to be mistakes. Just have to play through it. Just have to learn from it. And I mean, from everything anyone's ever seen from Ronnie Johnson, he will do that.
A question: can Ronnie use his right hand? I've seen him do it. But we'll
He
talk
can
about
do it.
that.
He can do it on the dribble. He doesn't shoot much with his right. I haven't seen him come in from the right side and challenge anybody with his right hand. But I haven't watched him a lot in layup drills. But he has no problem dribbling the basketball with his right hand. So I assume that he could do it. He seems to be more inclined to use the left, and mainly left-handed players do that a lot more because they have a built-in defense against right-handed defenders.
Yeah.
So he normally will go with his left hand more. The great thing about Ronnie is, and unlike Lou, is that he is a threat from outside, and he will hit a three-pointer, and he'll score from out there. He'll shoot a jumper too. I mean, he's not only going to try to penetrate on you, he'll shoot from outside, and if you don't think he won't, he'll keep challenging you out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, in my experience watching him, he's pretty left-handed dominant. I think I had a Purdue professor once tell me that most left-handed people are ambidextrous. Is that not? Is that true? Is that not
I
true?
think-
Is that internet myth?
I think that
Or
they,
pretty close to ambidextrous.
It
I should
depends,
say.
but I think they tend to be more than right-handed.
Yeah. So I guess there's potential there, and I might just be completely talking ridiculous
We need to bring
right now.
some theory.
Yeah,
here.
I haven't seen him enough. He's seen him a heck of a lot more in that environment than I have, but I just think that mostly every time I've seen him take the ball inside against taller players, he's used his left and has been successful doing it, so I doubt that there's any reason to try to change.
Well, we had a question about Jay Simpson, and we could all predict whether he made his 250 pounds weight, but we expect Jay Simpson to play tonight, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. He looks thin to me. I mean, he looks a lot thinner to me than when I saw him 3 months ago. And they're pushing him. You know, as everybody knows, he's had an asthma condition. And, that's a medical condition that he's had, for his whole life. And he has to deal with that and learn how to deal with it. And they're trying to get him to learn how to deal with it. And this is difficult for a young man. I mean, it really is. And I think that's one of his main issues. And the other thing is to play hard. We talk about it at Purdue. We always have, going back to the Katie era, about playing hard. And there's no excuse not to. And if you don't, you're not playing. It's as simple as that. It's an easy thing. But for anybody who thought he was going to redshirt, wasn't going to happen. Brian's talked about it. He has too much talent. And they're going to have to figure out a way to get him to play a lot of minutes or get him his minutes up. But I think in our case, you just have a 6'9" guy that weighs 260 pounds, who has a skill set. Is hard to say, hey, why don't you sit down for a year? Because in 3 years he might be out of here anyway if the light ever goes off.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting about, and I'll let you comment, but about Simpson, because in the recruiting process, he was a little bit of a guy that, as I recall, that I'm not watching as close as you are, Brian, but that kind of snuck up on us a little bit. Obviously he committed very, very early, but we see a little bit of how Matt Painter recruits, and when you get a guy like that, because again, you can't coach the body, so to speak.
They were able to identify him very early. They offered him before anybody else really had a chance to look at him, and he just committed on the spot.
And he held with his commitment.
And he held with his commitment, yeah. Now, just kind of going back to what we were talking about in terms of his, obviously he's got the asthma. The other thing with him is he's got a very casual, very laid-back personality. But he's got a lot of talent. He's got a great body. Now, you know who was the exact same way? Carl Landry. Exact same personality.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about
Carl Landry got to Purdue having no idea how good he could be. And I remember Gene Cady, when he was a junior, coming out of junior college, shows up on campus, and one of the first things Gene Cady says about him was, we expect him to lead us in scoring his first year at Purdue. I remember I said something to Landry about that, and he's like, really? Wow. Well, that's just the way Carl Landry was. If the same light that went on for Landry ever goes on for Simpson, he's got every bit the same amount
Yeah,
of
and
talent.
and
as
Cardinal
they're
was like-
different players, but he's the same caliber of talent as Carl Landry was. Just a matter
And
of
Cardinal
Dwight
was the
coming
same way his redshirt freshman year. I mean, I remember his redshirt freshman year, him looking at me and saying, "I can't play at
Yeah, I
this
wanna
level."
quit.
I mean, it's impossible. I can't play at this level. So, yeah, and we hope that happens to both him and AJ. And if they do, if the attitude ever catches up with their skill set, then our complaint will be they're not going to be here long enough. I'm telling you, because both have that. You know, I look at Thrbeet, the kid from Connecticut who took us out in the tournament a couple years ago, and you take A.J. Hammond, you put him next to him, and that's what we were going against. Thrbeet has never made it in the NBA now.
Yeah.
He hadn't made it in the NBA, but at the college level, he changed the game. You couldn't go in there, especially with the small team that we had. And it opens up those passing lanes and opens up those lanes to drive and stuff. And I'm telling you, you can't supplant a 7-foot, 280-pounder. When you got one of them around, it's a beautiful thing, because we haven't had one in a long time.
Not one that could play.
Exactly. Well,
I think I used to say he doesn't clog the lane, he is the lane.
Yeah.
He just kind of towers over everybody, and that's something Purdue's never had. I mean, maybe Brad Miller years ago.
Brad Miller, possibly, but he
was still more of an outside.
And
But he was big.
It's
Yeah,
been
he's
back.
big.
It's been back, and I go back 1977, so it goes back to Joe Barry, and that's it.
And I said that this morning, that he reminds me, he doesn't remind me of Joe Barry Carroll in the way he plays, but the way he catches the ball in the block, kind of turns his body to shoot. There's something that does remind me of him. And obviously Carroll comes in as a freshman and blocks about 8 shots a game. I don't see him as quite a natural shot blocker, A.J. Hammond, as Joe Barry was. But I also, there's some things that just that size.
Well,
he's bigger than Joe Barry was. So.
Size isn't just height either. He's got these
he's just
gigantic
big.
hands, and he's got these big, broad shoulders and this big head. And he just,
He's a big guy.
he can get his hand on a ball when he's rebounding at a place where nobody else can even reach it. And once he gets one hand on it, with those giant mitts, once he gets one hand on it, forget it, it's over.
Well, Brian put us up to the picture that we had in our basketball preview, which is one of my favorites of him doing this, and he takes up the entire page. He is a big guy from that standpoint. One of the things too that you have to like about, and you've been around Matt Painter as a player, Matt Painter obviously in his time as coaching, is it ain't no love fest. I mean, it's hard work, and they go out and you know, there are going to be ups and downs, just because it's also about teaching guys how to play.
Well, I don't know how many people went to the exhibition game, the second one.
Right. I'm going to bring that
but
up.
the start of the second half, I mean, that's Matt Painter. I mean, you guys want to go out there and mess around, and I asked him after the game why you did it, and he said, I did it because no one knew who they were guarding.
Yeah.
He said, it's a pretty simple game.
like
You're
this
supposed
answer.
to know who your man is, and if you go out, and he said, I didn't have one, I had the whole unit.
Yeah.
So he called a timeout. He said, if they want to sit on the bench, that's fine, we'll go a different direction, and he'll do that. And if you recall, if we go back to that early part of that 2007 season, with the year we lost to Wofford, we went out to Las Vegas, and we played very badly. And we had a couple of guys that got on the bus late, and they got suspended for the game. That would be, I think it was TT and Grant.
Yeah.
And so they didn't even play in the game that we beat Missouri State in a close game. But this whole thing was unraveling. We lost to Wofford. We went out there and played, and I mean, no one was interested. And I can remember talking to Rick Ray at breakfast the second day, and I mean, he looked like he was going to commit suicide. I said, Rick, what's going on, man? He said, you don't understand. This is my job. We're going to get fired. We're looking for work. I mean, I said, hey, Coach, it's okay. I think we can get through this thing. Oh, I don't know. And I mean, that's how serious it was. And basically he said, look, if I got to play Bobby Riddell, I'm going to play Bobby because Bobby wants to play.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's going to be here as long as that guy's here.
Yeah.
So, and I have confidence in that. By the way, if you think it's any different in a lot of different other programs, successful programs, you're wrong. Bo Ryan's the same way. Coach Izzo's the same way. Thad Matta's the same way. I mean, that's the way it is. You're going to play at this level. You're going to play the way they want you to play. And there's not too many of them that are inviting these guys over to their house every night and saying, hey, let's look at a movie and have some hot chocolate. That's just not how it is.
what you saw happen there in the second exhibition game, I think in the first couple minutes of the second half, if I remember correctly, Newberry got an offensive rebound and Painter flipped and took all 5 guys off the floor, put in 5 new guys. I think that's an option he has this year. I think, you've seen over the years Purdue's gotten some more depth than perhaps it had before. A couple years ago it was Robbie Hummels on the floor, he's not coming off because we don't have another option. I think in the post especially, you haven't had the options you have now. So now he's got the luxury where if somebody's slacking off, Rayfeld Davis comes in the game. If one of the centers isn't getting it done, one of the other 2 comes in. If Jacob Lawson's not playing well, or Donnie Hale's not playing well, Jacob Lawson comes in, or vice versa. So I think over the course of the last couple of recruiting classes, I think this team is deeper than it's ever been. So Painter's got more opportunities to kind of make examples of people.
Yeah, and he's good at doing that from time to time. So that's that part of it. So it's part of the joy of watching him coach as well. All right, we need to take a break because we've already shot through this about 5 minutes over this segment, which I expected with Larry. But Larry, thank you for taking the time to join us. You could stay for the next segment while we talk about the football coaching situation, but we will spare you that.
Thank you.
I mean,
I'm not a journalist anymore.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of things good about being old, but not being a journalist anymore is one of them.
Yeah.
People say, well, you're still in the Purdue games. Yeah, I wonder who I'm rooting for.
All right, Larry.
Not Newberry.
Yeah, and not Newberry, not Bucknell, but it will be an interesting one tonight, 7 o'clock, Mackey Arena. Pregame starts at 6 on the Purdue Radio Network. And Larry, one thing that's fun about, and I will have one last question about Matt Painter, and I think I've shared this with Brian so many times. Even on this post-game show, and I know when we go and watch him in the media room, the guy never ceases to amaze how well he can teach you something about basketball. Every time you talk to him, he's got something interesting to say.
I agree.
And that's a lot of fun from a fan standpoint to watch. Okay, we're going to shoo Larry out. We'll bring Brian and I will analyze a little bit of what's going on in Purdue football coaching, and we really look forward to that. So stay tuned for a couple minutes, and we'll be back. Thanks to our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and of course, Follett's Purdue Pride. Stay tuned, and we'll see you back here in 2 minutes.
Check out the Purdue collection now at Follett's. Boiler up with Nike Fantastic T-shirts, League and Champion fashion colors. Simply fabulous, simply Follett's. Purdue Pride everywhere on game day. Nike sideline, worn by the team, by the players, and by you. And make every day game day with tailgate toss. Follett's Purdue Pride, a Purdue tradition, 17 game day locations.
Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
Let State Farm agent Trent Johnson handle all the moving parts to your insurance. Whether it's for auto, home, life, or financial services, Trent Johnson is there with more ways to help and more ways to save. Call or visit Trent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's a Friday Night Frenzy. It's about tradition. It's about pride. It's about rivalries. It's about commitment. It's about teamwork. It's about the action of the game. On Friday nights, when area high school teams hit the field for the game, our team hits the field to get you the scores, the highlights, and all of the action. Friday Night Frenzy, a high school tradition.
Segment 3, Golden Black Live. Brian Newbert, Alan Karpick here, and we are still taking your questions. Many of them we have not answered yet because we wanted to get a little bit into the coaching situation. Not that there's a whole lot new to report, because we don't know all of what the plan is. Obviously, been well documented that Coach Danny Hope has been under fire because Purdue's 3-6. I mean, I don't think there's any question that from where this team has been from September 29th to November the 9th, a huge change and a huge sea change, and that's caused a large-scale evaluation, at least by the fan base and certainly by the administration when the season ends.
Yeah, I certainly think that you obviously don't ever want to be 0-5 in the Big Ten, but this year especially, when you came into the year with a team with you touted them as having more starters, returning starters than anybody in the Big Ten. At the end of September, people are talking about Purdue like maybe a potential top 25 team. You're half of the Big Ten, half the division is ineligible for the Big Ten title game. This was kind of an opportunity. This was kind of the year you were building toward. You know, they've had so many injuries the last couple of years. Obviously, this was the year where you start to maybe reap the benefits of that because you have so many experienced guys. And obviously, it's just completely fallen apart. You know, 0-5 in the Big Ten, not competitive in most of those games. Obviously, they almost won at Ohio State. But that is, now that you've lost all these other games, that almost drives you even crazier because you know what you're capable of. It's just not happening. So obviously, the way the season's gone, it would seem like the path we're headed down is Purdue's going to take a long, hard look at the coaching situation and might be in the market for new leadership here in a couple weeks.
Well, and we've had our fair share of questions today about, well, why doesn't Purdue make a move now if they know? And we're making assumptions. We don't absolutely know that that it's all said and done. But if they're going to make a move, why not do it now? Well, first, we don't know that they're making a move. But secondly, there would be seem to be some reasons that this team is still bowl eligible. I understand that. But if it does get in a situation where it's not bowl eligible,
they're eligible to be bowl eligible.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously, you have to win out the rest of the way just to get to where you got last year. And everything I just talked about in terms of expectations, what you did last year was never the goal this season. Last year had to be a step to something bigger. And if you match last year, maybe it gives Purdue something to think about. I don't know, but in the context of what you expected this season, it's just not enough. So obviously, in terms of let's say Purdue is going to make a move. Why not make it now? Well, I think you still have a lot of football left to play. You have a lot of kids on this team who, are invested in this program. You don't want, potentially, I'm only guessing here, you don't want to, kind of make this experience any harder for them than it is right now. That would be my guess, personally. There's something to be said for if you know you're going to do something, do it now, rip the Band-Aid off, et cetera, get started on your search. But nowadays, the way things work, you can execute a search behind the scenes. Now, obviously, you might say what you will about how ethical that is or what have you, but it is just kind of the cost of doing business. That's the way the game is played now.
Well, and 15 years ago, there were 15% of the football coaches had agents, had representation. Now, just about all of them do, and that plays a role in that as well. You can go agent to agent on from a search standpoint. That plays into it to some extent. I think too that you bring up a very valid point, and that is Morgan Burke has always been very, the athletic experience for the student athlete has always come first, and be in a situation where he wants to have it. He's always said, we evaluate our coaches at the end of the season, and yet that hasn't always, may not always happened, and yet he's always had the ability to be able to you obviously evaluate him as each week goes on, but publicly maybe he says that you evaluate him at the end of the season. But it still all plays into how you come to a decision in this situation.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about the possibility of something happening in season, I think there's a couple benchmarks here. One was last weekend when Purdue was eliminated from winning more games than it won last year. This weekend then is, if you lose, you clinch a losing record. You can't go to the postseason, so you would do worse than you did last season. But that said, even with those benchmarks, I really don't see Purdue doing something during the season, just for what I talked about before. You don't want to mar this for these kids. Obviously, they're going through enough right now, and the fact that they're losing these games, and everything's kind of turned on them. They expected this to be a pretty good season. Obviously, it's completely gone off the rails. That's a lot for them to deal with, and there are kids emotionally invested in this program and this coaching staff. I don't know if you just don't want to put them through more than they're already going through right now. Now, as I said before, if you want to do something from a search standpoint, there's enough you can do kind of in the shadows, so to speak, where you can get just as much done as you could if you had an actual vacancy to go out there and put on the market right now.
And I'm still sifting through the questions. One of the things we have, at least at Golden Black, it's not that we don't talk about or look at potential successors at any time to a coaching situation, but by the same token, the job isn't open at this point, and trust us, we'll be ready to deal with that when the time comes. But it does throw into a lot of discussion about that. One of the interesting parts of this has been recruiting, and the fact that there is a dynamic that goes with this of trying to keep the kids that you have committed, how all that works. We've talked to some guys, obviously, that have committed since a lot of this has gone on, since this tailspin has begun. What's the dynamic there?
Well, if a recruit's really paying attention to what's going on, they're conscious of everything that's going around on the internet. They're conscious of reports. They're conscious of rumors. Obviously, you want recruits' minds to be at ease. Right now, I don't even know what Purdue could tell them because this is such a tenuous situation right now. Obviously, I'm sure the coaches are just going business as usual. I don't think they're going to call up and be like, "Look, man, we're in real trouble. You should look at your other options." I don't think they're doing that. I think it's just from a coaching perspective, you just have to go business as usual until you're told not to do it anymore. So, from a recruiting perspective, you want those kids' mind at ease, but there's no real way to do it because there's no resolution to the situation yet.
Yeah, and we'll obviously have more of that as time goes on, but and yet you have also a lot of guys that have come to this program, the Austin Applebys of the world, the Bilal Marshalls, guys that are redshirt freshmen that are waiting to play. You got to find a way, no matter what, even if you have transition, to keep the ship afloat as much as possible, because you are going to field a football team next year for the 2013 schedule. And whether you have the same coach or a new coach, you have to be able to at least try to keep as many of the guys that you want invested, keep them invested. That's a challenge.
And, that's something players nowadays are more concerned about than ever. Obviously, players, for the most part, care about their coaches and whatnot. They're invested in these coaching staffs. They've built relationships with these guys. But at the same time, what players want more than anything is they want to play. So you're always concerned about, well, if this coaching staff leaves, they recruited me for their plan. They recruited me for their system. If somebody else comes in here, what's going to happen to me? If I'm a drop-back quarterback and somebody comes in here wanting to run the wishbone, what's going to happen to me? At the same time, it can work both ways. If you're a drop-back quarterback and somebody comes in here with a very, very pass-friendly, spread offense or what have you, that might actually work to your benefit. So I think guys really care about, as much as caring about their coaches who might be leaving, they care about what lies in store for them in terms of how they'd fit into their program.
Yeah, and even back in the mid-'90s when we made the transition from Jim Coletto to Joe Tiller, there were some guys that went from, though he didn't change position, look at a guy like Billy Dicken who was having a hard time not only dealing with the pass rushes in Jim Coletto's last year, he goes from there to becoming a first-team All-Big Ten quarterback. There are other examples of position changes, and that's part of the intrigue that we'll deal with all in good time. So, Brian, I want to thank you again for your excellent analysis, and as always, and Larry Clisby and Stacy Clarity for joining us on the road. And I want to thank Lydia and and Kim, obviously, and Gordon Jackson, our friends and partners here at News 18, for all their help. We will be back next week. Calvin Williams will be our guest, former Purdue receiver and works in the Purdue Athletic Department. And we'll look forward to talking with him in addition to taking your questions as per usual. And we will also may alter our schedule a little bit in December. We'll see how things go, but we'll keep you posted on that. But we thank you for joining us today. Thanks again to our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and of course Follett's Purdue Pride. We'll look forward to seeing you next week on Gold and Black Live.